Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network. 'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven. A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UBNradio.com.
Hi everyone, this is Christy Reeves and welcome back to another episode of Rebel Hearts. It's Wednesday again and we're here back to empower you and inspire you to become the change that you want to see in the world. Now, a lot of the work that I've been doing over the past 10 years or even 20 years has been about learning about the power of mind and the power of thought and how we can actually change our life, change our reality by the way we think and speak and the thoughts that we send out into the world. So I'm so excited about today's guest because she's all about the power of the mind and the law of attraction, and I'm sure we have so much amazing content to share with you today. So let me tell you a little bit about her. Her name is Flizanes, and she's an empowerment strategist and the host of the Fit to Love podcast show. She's the director of Invisible Fitness and the Amazon best-selling author of Fit to Love. She was named Best Personal Trainer in Los Angeles for 2007 by Elite Traveler magazine. JJ has been featured in many national magazines, including Shape, Fitness, Muscle and Fitness Hers, Elegant Bride, and Women's Health, as well as appeared on NBC, CBS, Fox 11, and KTLA. Her newest book, The Invisible Fitness Formula, debuted at number 2 on the Amazon bestseller list for women's health and number 2 as the hot new release on May 18th, 2017. And I'm so excited she's joining us today and sharing her amazing wisdom and knowledge. Honestly, this woman has done so much and she knows so much. So I'm so, no pressure, JJ.
No
so
pressure.
I'm so excited that she's on today's show. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Christy. I'm excited. I love your show. It stands for everything that I'm doing in a broad, very broad way, and being able to bring some of this information and talk with you is going to be really fun.
It's so amazing that you're here today. And I was just saying to JJ, I'm like, I was figuring out what to talk to her about because you know she has such a vast array of knowledge. So I felt we wanted to start talking a little bit about the law of attraction, and then we'll talk a little bit more about her newest book, The Invisible Fitness Formula, which she has here in the studio with us. And I'm so excited to be sharing that with you. Before we go into the law of attraction, I feel that every single person has a journey that got us or got that person to where he or she is right now. What was your journey that got you into studying the law of attraction and studying the power of the mind? What was that about, JJ?
That's a very good question. And I can say that when I moved from New York to LA in 2000, and the law of attraction just is. It's not something you actually practice. It's just you're always sort of a beacon of emitting a frequency, and then you're receiving that which you are in alignment with. So even though you may not know it's happening, it's always happening. And there were so many times in my life where things had happened, and I never questioned them. That's just what happened. It wasn't until I got here and I started to work for myself, and I started to learn about networking, and I ran into life coaches and all kinds of business coaches, and I actually started working with a coach, and that coach did law of attraction work, and she gave me a CD. And when I heard Esther Hicks channeling Abraham say, you are the creator of your own reality, I was driving and I went, I'm the creator of my own reality. Well, gee, if that's the case, and if I don't like something, I can change it.
Amazing, yeah.
Well, okay then. I felt like all of a sudden that just like broke open my life, and I thought, well, that's great news. And over the years, it's been interesting because when I say that to some people, I've learned who hears that well and who doesn't hear that well. Some people hear that and go and feel shame and think that they've made a lot of mistakes and it's their fault and there's something wrong with them, and that's not how I mean it, and that's not how it's meant. It's just meant that you have the power to change your life and to create your experience. And so it really was probably sometime around 2002 2003, when I first heard those words, and I can say life changed after that.
That's amazing. And that was the first CD I listened to about the law of attraction, the Esther and Jerry Hicks series with the channeling of Abram. And it totally opened something up, because so often we feel we're the victim of our circumstances, or life is happening to us, instead of realizing that life is happening because of us or through us. So how did that, I don't know, that light bulb going on saying, oh my gosh, whatever is in my life, I've created or I am creating, so I can change it. How did that affect your personal story, your personal life?
Oh, in every way, because I just would look at, well, what is it about what I'm doing, or how am I being, or what am I believing, or what am I feeling? I mean, by that point, I think I knew about hypnosis. Maybe not. I mean, I spent so much learning in the last 17 years. And since I started my own business, and I've met all kinds of people, and and even before then, working as a personal trainer in New York City, I learned what you think you're supposed to learn in the science area. And of course, learning that most trainers didn't even know the science of the body. Basic sciences like anatomy, physiology, physics, gravity pulls down. Anyway, it's a whole nother tangent and pet peeve. But once I went through those sciences, in my toolbox was, had the anatomy, the physiology, and the biomechanics. And when those tools didn't work for people, I would learn more. I'd go deeper. I'd go deeper. And so that's so the toolbox over time has a lot of tools in it, and it's expanded. And so I think at that time I was learning about hypnosis and understanding that the power of the mind is that 88% of our mind is subconscious.
Yes.
It's like the iceberg is most, detrimental underneath the water, not above the water. It might be this big above, but it's this big below. And so it was in that, realizing that it wasn't just about my conscious mind, but the thoughts and beliefs and imprinting that had happened to me as a child, or modeling that I'd had, or things
even
that I learned.
Epigenetics,
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just brought something up that I think is so important, because people say, well, I'm thinking positive, I'm saying XYZ, I'm doing my affirmation, but why are things not changing? I'm like, it's your unconscious or subconscious, whatever term you want to use, that is holding all these old thoughts and patterns from maybe when you were 2 years old, maybe even prenatal stages, like stress that your mother went through while she was pregnant with you. So how do you access, or how can we learn how to access that, or become aware of what is in these 88%?
Aware. So when you were talking about that, I actually was with certain people recently, and to keep everybody safe here, will not mention any names, and I asked somebody if they were upset, and that person said no. Yet the energy, the facial expression, the body language was all very much agitated, irritated, and upset. So I believe that we don't have an awareness about what it is that we're actually feeling. We're not in our bodies. So separate from, like, you don't even have to go back that far into, subconscious beliefs. You can just go into right now in this red hot moment. We are so addicted to not feeling things, and to technology, and to speed, and to numbing, because we don't know how to process. The most important information I think out there is to understand emotion and how to process and manage and release, not even manage. When I do stress reduction workshops, I don't call them stress reduction. I'm sorry, I do call them. I don't call them stress management. People are like, oh, do you do stress management? I said, I do not do stress management. Stress management means you actually rearrange your stress, you manage it, but that doesn't mean it goes away. I do stress reduction and elimination, because we want less stress. We don't want to just take what we have and manage it nice and neatly and put it in a box and categorize it and label it. We want to get rid of it. So when it comes to awareness, I think our consciousness, the speed at which technology moves, the speed at which information comes at us these days, it's hard to keep up, and we're in overload because our brain can't keep up with the amount of technology and things that are moving. But so we have all this information that's outside of us, and yet we haven't learned what's inside of us. We don't know how we feel, what we think, why we believe that, why I reacted that way. And we keep getting further and further away from that self-awareness, which then leads us to thinking that all I have to do is put a picture on a vision board or say some words and magic's going to happen, and not understand the connection of that it's about the emotional frequency that you're omitting. And if you're not even aware of how you're feeling and you can't identify that in your body, then you're going to keep thinking that 12% of your conscious mind that I'm just going to say these 10 affirmations. I'm going to tell you the story of how I want this thing, yet the other 88% of me feels the lack of it. I might say I really, really want this, but when I look at that, it actually makes me feel bad. I feel sad when I look at that. And that doesn't mean just because you say you want it, you're going to get it, because you keep admitting not having it. The majority of it is the not having it, not the having it. So, the awareness on all levels when it comes to law of attraction, changing your life in any way, fitness, health, disease, relationship, whatever it is, I think there has to be a new focus, and it will. We'll get there. We're going to implode, and then we're going to have to get back to basics. Absolutely. Right. Because we're just running, and feelings unexpressed don't die in the body. So you cannot run them. And eventually we'll hit the wall, and we'll have to talk about what we think and how we feel.
Yeah, and I feel like in our world, we're still being educated. We're educating the mind, but we're not educating the heart. And all the education we're receiving in school, it's all left brain, left brain, left brain, but we're not being taught how to connect to our emotions. We're not being taught to be happy. There's actually this kid, maybe he's an adult now by then, but years ago he did a TED talk, and he's like, you adults always ask me what I want to be when I'm grown up. He's like, I want to be the same as I'm right now, happy. Why don't we teach happiness in school? Why do we have to learn about math, biology, but not happiness? And I think there is a need to change that. Because, then we're adults and people have to go to therapy or healers or whatever it is, because we never learned how to connect to these emotions. But what you said, we've been suppressing because we're required to show up.
We think it's the doing. We forget we're human beings. We're supposed to be. And truthfully, and this ties in law of attraction, as Abraham says, everything we choose to do is because we think we'll feel better when we have that. So literally every choice we make, even if you think it's the smart financial planning, right career choice, somewhere you think that when you make that choice, you'll be happy later, or you'll be happy, period. So even though we may not think or value our emotions on one level, everything we do is about feeling something and experiencing everything. And if we can dial that back and get that, then we may start to make different choices when we keep making this choice and it never leads to where we can skip over the doing part and just go straight to the being.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did you start implementing these changes in your life? Was it more through affirmations? Was it more like really connecting to your emotions? What created these first shifts and changes in your life?
Well, I went back and I evaluated my life, and I saw how it worked. I saw when I was in New York, right before I left, I had clients that I was training. I was working in a restaurant part-time just because I got bored, and so I thought, I'll go get a part-time job at a restaurant. And then I ended up in this restaurant because I didn't care. I ended up becoming a manager. Then I was going to move, and they begged me to stay, and they gave me a management position, and they paid for my move. And I manifested basically someone to pay. I didn't want to drive across country with my 2 cats. And next thing you know, I'm attracting the boss in New York who's going to pay for my move to California, right? Plus a whole bunch of other things in the meantime. And there's nothing except I'm helping him out. So I would look at things that when I knew what I wanted, and when I was clear and I had a belief that this is what I'm going to do. Fast forward, Harvecker, when he owned Peak Potentials, did his first Extreme Health. When he decided on stage that he was going to have something called Extreme Health, and he didn't even tell anybody about it before he started selling it, it was written on a sheet, and I was volunteering at an event. And when I saw it, I said, I'm going to be on that stage.
Amazing.
Harv didn't know me. I didn't know him personally, but I was on that stage.
Oh my God.
So it was there's a knowing. And when I went back and I looked at different aspects of my life that had turned out, when I was a senior in high school, we did, because I was a musical theater major, and I wanted to be, I was usually the lead in the musicals, or I was a, supporting role. And of course, it's your senior year, you're going to be the lead. I was expecting to be the lead, and we were doing Peter Pan. And my director had said, we were going to have to cut your hair. And I said, I'm not cutting my hair, and and I'm going to be Peter Pan. And so I ended up learning all the songs and learning all the lines, and I came in a wig to show him that the wig could work. I'm like, I'm not cutting my hair. You can't ask me to cut my hair before prom and graduation. Like, that's insane.
And look like a boy.
Right. And but he was like, no, we are insisting. I'm like, well, you're not going to win. And so, and he didn't. I was Peter Pan. So, I mean, but it's that, but it's a knowing. And so when I went back and I looked at how it showed up in my life before I even knew what it was, I just started wanting to do more of that.
Amazing.
And I will say that, you know, because I've listened, I've studied for years, since 2002, 2003, right? We're in 2017, it's 14 years. It wasn't until I wrote my last book, Fit to Love, that at some point I recognized, while I knew it and I could tell you, I could tell you any answer probably to any question you could ask. What would Abraham say in this? Really, I wasn't living it. And it wasn't until I hit the wall that I realized that I was on this, because I'm smart. I have talents in different areas. Like, I'm a good producer. I got this book done in a month, right? Okay.
Wow.
So I can do things quickly, and because of that, I've relied on that. But I've recognized when I did the last book that I was in a little bit of I was in anxiety. I wasn't being fueled by just inspiration and positive. There was a fear. There was an end result. I was focusing on what was going to happen after the book came out, and how life was going to be different. And I wasn't in the moment. And I realized, again, it was like anxiety fueled. No, not the whole time. There were parts where I had a business partner and I had an investor, and there were times where it was enjoyable and I felt great and it was bright. But the bottom line feeling was really this anxiousness. And I stood back, because I had told him, my investor at the time and partner, I said, you know, I'm not going to do this all by myself. If you're not willing to help me create momentum and give me support for a certain amount of time, I'm not going to do it all myself. I'm tired of doing everything myself. Law of attraction is you catch the wave. You're the surfer in the ocean waiting for the perfect wave to catch it the perfect time, so that you become more effortless. And you're in connection with a wave that's taking you into the ocean, and it's this ride. It's this thrilling, amazing, in alignment ride. And that's what I want, and that's what's possible. And I don't want to push and effort and push and keep doing that. So so after the book got published the first time, because then we moved to more of a Hay House Balboa Press, which I know we're going to talk about, Louise Hay. They became my new publisher after the second edition. But I realized I'm not actually living this. And so I checked myself out of the rat race, so to speak. I unsubscribed from a whole bunch of business mentors and gurus that I was following. And I thought, no, I'm going to literally sit here and wait to be inspired. I mean, not that I was going to sit. I'm never just going to sit. But I was going to live in a way that I talked about, that I believed in. I was going to only act when I felt inspired. Truly ready, in alignment, and inspired. When I allowed myself to open up to messages from, whether it be my subconscious, from source, from my higher self, call it whatever you want, but I was allowing that process to happen, and I wasn't so like this. So that's when I really. But that was 2011. So that's more than 9 years of kind of knowing it. And I did manifest my husband. So that I did very well in 2008, 2007, 2006. I guess I manifested him in 2006. I met him in 2006, and then 8 months later he showed up, and that was it. So and that's why I wrote the book, because I really did. I was 100% in alignment. So I've used the principles in really strong, effective ways at many times, but I'm human, so there are times where, you know,
we're learning, right?
Everything is an evolution. When you come up against something that you think you want and you aren't getting it, you have to evaluate, what's going on with me? What is it I really believe? Because when you really know, that's when things really happen.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, I just had that same conversation, a similar conversation with a friend of mine yesterday. She's like, you know, is it even safe to follow my authentic self? Will people ridicule me, or how will people perceive me? And I'm like, you know, but if you're really following that authentic self, you will know exactly, again, connecting to that emotion, like, you will know exactly what that step is. You will know exactly what people to connect with, to reach out to, and what people to surround yourself with, because your authentic self is going to guide you. And it's not going to guide you to the wrong people. Your inauthentic self will. And that is when the ridicule come in, or the lack of support. But your authentic self has all the answers. And I think that is what we're kind of in a way that muscle that we have to strengthen, that muscle of tuning within and following our heart, because like we talked earlier, we're so much in our brain in our society. We're not a heart-centered society.
Right.
So do you have any tools that you teach, or maybe a tool that helped yourself to
Sure.
connect to that you could share?
Sure. One of my favorite psychologists is Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. He has passed. He wrote Nonviolent Communication.
Yes.
And nonviolent communication gets mentioned, I believe it's mentioned in the Invisible Fitness Formula. I think I talk about it a little bit, maybe in Fit to Love, but if I don't, it's in my podcast all over the place.
Okay.
Because the book, sometimes, again, the vibrational connection to things, like the title turned me off. Nonviolent communication. I didn't identify myself as someone who was violent, so it didn't speak to me. And I don't remember what it was about it. Maybe I went to a class and I didn't even read the book. Maybe I listened to the CDs. That's probably what it was. I listened to the CDs and I really liked it. And then I went to a class, and my brain works like this. When you lay out something for me, some information, and at first, if it doesn't make sense to me in my brain, I rearrange it to make better sense. And then I go, oh. And now, but I don't necessarily tell anybody that I've rearranged it, because I didn't realize I rearranged it until I take everybody else I know to the same class, and everyone looks at me like, this is confusing, I don't really understand. I'm like, what do you mean? It's so clear. Well, because JJ's brain rearranged it to make more sense, to make better sense. Because in nonviolent communication, a lot of what the suggestion is for me to empathize with you, for me to be able to see within you what I may not be able to see within myself. And while the vocabulary and the steps are powerful, I believe, and still do, that if you can't identify it within yourself first, it's going to be really hard to see it in somebody else. And so I've used nonviolent communication to help people with a 3-step process to identify emotion. And I actually talk about it in Secret Number 4. The book is very medical and scientific on the first half, and the second half is very emotional, psychological, behavioral, and even spiritual. And so I definitely recommend, and I've got some podcast shows on it, and using the tools of nonviolent communication, of identifying the emotion, identifying the need, which is something that we as a society don't have vocabulary for. I don't even think we really have emotions down. We think there's like 3, mad, sad, and happy. And there's like really not that many more. And based on this work, there's 100 different feeling words, like 100 different feeling words, and they each have a little different frequency. So they're not the same. While you can categorize that this is general anger, there's levels of anger, right? Rage is not the same as irritation. So we have different intensity levels of each of these emotions. So that's the first step is, and then there's the body sensation and connecting with the body and being mindful, what consciousness is. And I think for a lot of people, so I run a group. It's a free manifestation challenge, and it's 30 days, and we actually are in day 6. Today is the 6th, right? And we're in day 6, and somebody had come on the group on Facebook and said, that she's being really triggered. And I thought about it, and she goes, how do I fix this? And obviously there's many tools someone can use to, and I think it's not just tools about fixing. I want to get away from people thinking there's something wrong with them.
Exactly.
It's not, a trigger is information for you. A trigger lets you know that there's a trauma and a wound that needs to be healed. End of story.
I call it calibration. I'm like, we're just seeing where you are right now in order to get to where you need to go. Right. And you need to find out where you are right now, because I'm like, if you want to get to Rome, you need to find out where you're at. So if you have to catch a plane, you can take a car. You have to get your GPS set up. Right. And I think, that gets us out of that whole judgment. It's bad to feel angry. It's bad to feel sad, or I shouldn't feel like that. It's like that shouldn't or couldn't, or it gets us out of it.
A lot of those inherited beliefs keep us from expressing and acknowledging and even understanding what it is we truly feel. So I don't. So she had asked about, I'm getting triggered all the time, and I'm holding it, and I don't know what to do about it. And so I sent her to one of the shows about that I did about nonviolent communication, about this 3-step process, and she listened to it, and she wrote back, and she said, "Oh my God, I think this is going to be great. I downloaded the sheet, and I'm ready to work with it." Because when it comes to there's the feeling, and there's a sensation in your body that happens, but people aren't necessarily in their bodies, right? Like you said, we're in our heads. We're in the thinking, we're in the left brain, we're in the planning and the strategizing. We're in fear a lot, and we're in anxiety a lot. And anxiety isn't really even a feeling. Anxiety is a body sensation to let us know there's something else that needs to be expressed. But we don't take these cues, we just repress them through drugs, food, alcohol, technology, control, shopping, sex. Anyway, there's
Overwork.
Workaholism, right? I mean, it's not really about what it is that you do. It's the imbalance and the misuse of whatever it is you're doing. It's not that all those things are good or bad. It's that there's an imbalance and you're constantly circling and you're not actually ever releasing or letting it go. So I would say that people. First, understanding their feelings, getting into their body, getting into their body, getting into your body, getting into your body. Like, I can't express that enough. People are just not in their bodies. And they're like, what do you mean I'm not in my body? Okay, right, because you had pain and you didn't know it, and now you have the warning signs you've missed. And so now you have, you have to have cancer or back pain or some bad thing really happened to you because you didn't catch all the other smaller symptoms that were trying to let you know that you're imbalanced and you're breaking down. Yeah. So the first thing is the feeling. The second thing is the needs. I think we have a judgment about being independent, about being successful, about what other people think about us.
Not wanting to rely on someone else or even proving our worth, showing, I can do this by myself. I don't need anyone.
Right. So the whole idea of needs means to a lot of people, in myself too, for a long time, meant needy, dependent. I don't like dependent at all on anything. I don't like addiction dependent. I don't like dependent on. But the reality of it is, it's not. We have needs. We have basic human needs. Like we need to eat. We need water. We need air. We need shelter. We need safety. Yeah. But then there's also emotional needs that we have as a human being on the planet. And when people start to identify what their needs are, and so one of my comments to the person who showed up today to say I'm getting triggered was, well, it sounds like you have a lot of needs that aren't being met. Yeah. And so you're constantly, and we subconsciously will manipulate and sabotage other people to get our needs met unconsciously, and we're not even aware of it. And that's why we stay in victim mentality, because we expect the other person to inherently somehow know what to do for us, but we're not taking responsibility for figuring out what to do for us and then take care of it. We're going to blame you for, well, you made me feel bad. Well, I didn't, because it wasn't about you. Well, how come I feel bad? It's your fault. So moving.
That victim position where we're like, okay, things are happening to us, not because of us.
Right.
Because we're not verbalizing it.
Right. And we're not aware. Yeah. We're not aware. We're not conscious. And so I think law of attraction wraps it all up in a bow to say it's about what's going on with you. And as long as you can play with it in a way that's respectful and patient and kind to yourself, and not use it to enhance shame or blame on yourself and to feel worse. It can be a very powerful tool. But sometimes people have a lot of shame that when they hear things like you're the creator of your own reality, want to go in a hole because they think, oh my God, I feel so bad that I've made all these bad choices. Versus and there's another layer to it too. Louise Hay and Hay House, I believe, were the publishers, and if they weren't, then I totally stand corrected. To what's her name? Carolyn Mace.
Carolyn Mace, yes.
Okay, so Carolyn Mace, right, is a medical intuitive and spiritual person who wrote The Anatomy of the Spirit and Sacred Contracts. And Sacred Contracts, that belief is really that, have you read the book? Do you know about sacred contracts? Okay, right. So there's the top level of law of attraction is, well, what can I do right now? What can I control? Well, I control my focal point. I can control what I talk about, what I think about. I can control or be aware of and adjust my feelings and my vibration and my expectations. I can control all that. But before I even came down into this physical body, had a plan. And in that
I call it the movie script for my life that I wrote.
This is my movie that I'm now in. And so if we take a broader perspective and not make it so much about my life in this moment right now and go blah, 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 this is this incarnation. Like, chill out, relax. It's okay. You're not going to get it all done. You're going to die. And then you're going to come back. And you have a lesson. And just, take it with a grain of salt instead of be so stressed out about, unless you're an atheist and you believe this is your only life and you never come back. I understand that. It might be stressful. But if you believe in anything else, higher power, whatever, take a tip and trust the higher power, trust the plan, trust the process, and don't be so like this about it. So I think it's a combination of different spiritual beliefs that one can start to try out, because some people, for this, it's very new. They've never heard this before, and they're like, what are you talking about? That's so different and so weird. But when you break down and you go to the feeling and the emotion and the belief, and you go, why am I anxious? Well, I'm anxious because I'm not going to make enough money. Well, why is that important? Well, if I'm not going to make enough money, then I can't do this, and this. Well, why is that important? Because if I don't do this, and this, I can't contribute to society. Well, why is that important? Because then I didn't do my job as a human on the planet, right?
Yeah,
like
so it goes deeper. Right. Like, you have to go down the rabbit hole, because underneath any kind of what we would consider consider negative emotion, fear, anxiety, sadness. It's something that is much, much deeper.
Right.
And we're looking at that surface emotion instead of like going, okay, why is it happening? Why am I feeling this? And what is underneath? Is it maybe something that I was told as a little kid?
Right.
And now it's showing up in a completely different way. But it's down there, you know, as a 2-year-old where I was taught or told XYZ.
Absolutely. And, you know, and it sounds for some people like a lot of work, but, you know, people spend lots of years in therapy talking about stuff that is a waste of time, in my opinion. Like top level stuff about what's going on in your job right now and blah, blah, blah. And it's management, right?
Yeah.
Management.
But it's also our energy flows where our attention goes. So if we talk about the problem, if we talk about what is not working out in our life or where we feel stuck, that is where we're putting it in all the energy. And then it's increasing in our life, where it's feeling stuck, like nothing is shifting because that's where our focus is. We're not looking at a solution-based support that way.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, that's what is why I love the law of attraction. Or let's talk about Louise Hay, who is using the power of positive thought in order to change that reality.
Yep.
And I always say, you know, how many hours a week are you watching TV? How many hours of a week are you circling these thoughts in your mind instead of saying, okay, I'm going to take that time and I'm just going to do some mirror work and tell myself that I'm amazing and beautiful and I love myself.
Yep. And how many hours are you spending wanting to be positive, but then watching the news?
Yeah.
How many times are you spending wanting to feel good, but focusing on things that will never make you feel good? And constantly talking about and sharing and complaining about things that will never, in its current state, make you feel good.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. Exactly. Let's talk a little bit about Louise Hay. And we talked before the show because Louise transitioned a few days ago, and she was such a big inspiration for me. I remember 20 years ago, I came across her book, You Can Heal Your Life, and it changed my life. And she's all about the power of positive thought, positive affirmation. And I remember seeing her a few years ago at an I Can Do It conference, and she was in her 80s at that time. And she said, and I decided to make the 80s the best decade of my life. And she had this light about her that was so contagious. But she's also one of these people who walk the talk.
Yes.
And who did her affirmations.
And experienced, I believe it was uterine cancer, and overcame that.
Through the positive affirmation.
Yep.
Because it was, again, stuffing down the emotion. She was, I think, by her stepdad, physically abused, sexually abused. And later on it showed up as cancer because she never dealt with it while it was happening or after it happened.
Right.
And I remember her doing positive affirmations and forgiveness work on it, and the cancer was gone.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
There's the power to heal and the miracles that we don't access enough.
Yeah.
We know, or we trust, or we think, or we hope that they're there, but a lot of people don't, whether it be have the courage or, it might just be have the courage or want to take the leap of faith, like to actually try until sometimes you get to that point where you have no choice.
Yeah.
And then at that point, you decide, well, what is it that I believe? You know, I believe that a lot of things, that the bad things that happen to us, the contrast is there to teach us, and we've put it there, and it's to help us clarify. And rather than look at it as I did this bad thing, okay, this has happened. Why did it happen, and what can I do with it? And for a lot of people, like they'll hear the therapeutic conversations that we're having, they'll be like, oh my God, I don't want to do that. That's too hard. Well, let me ask you: do you figure things like this out at work? Do you do hard things at work? Do you figure out numbers and spreadsheets and how, and how things work and you put them together? It's no different. It's basically taking apart and then understanding all the parts and pieces of make up who you are. And actually, once you understand that, it makes life a lot easier. And when you can release some of that baggage that you're holding on to that's not serving you, that you're not even aware of, your life changes. And it just takes a little bit of understanding that we all have feelings. We all share these 100 feelings that are on this list, and we all share the 86 needs that's on the list as well. And we're all just trying to get our needs met and to go for love and happiness. And so there's not enough attention on that. And Louise definitely shifted that for all of us. I think I have a lot of her books and a lot of the books that she published as Hay House. And for that, I'm indebted. I've got a ton of books from Hay House. I love Hay House.
And she said something, no, it was actually Cheryl Richardson said something that was really interesting when she first came across Louise's work. And I think it's so connected to what you shared earlier. We have these thoughts, or we say positive affirmations that I want to manifest that. Or we look at our vision board saying, I want to manifest what is on my vision board. But we don't feel it in our body.
Right.
And it's interesting interesting when Cheryl Richardson she co-wrote a book with Louise Hay, and I'm totally spacing out on the name, but I'm sure Jarvis is going to find it in a second and put it up on the screen. Louise Hay and Cheryl Richardson. And Cheryl shared in the book how when she came across that positive affirmation, the mirror work, because Louise says you stand in front of the mirror and it's like, I love you. You're amazing. You're beautiful. And she did that, and she thought to herself, who am I kidding? I don't think I'm beautiful. I don't love myself. This is stupid. This is weird. Yeah, that's the book. Thank you. But she wasn't feeling what she was saying. But she showed up every day and looked in the mirror and said, I love myself. I am beautiful. I'm amazing. And she said, and it took a couple of weeks, and then she's like, oh, I became less skeptical. And it took another couple of weeks, like, maybe I believe myself. And then it took a few months until it really sank in and became an emotion. And she said, and that's when my life started to change, when I finally felt it in my whole being and my whole body. And she's like, and now I cannot go a day without doing these positive affirmations and saying to myself in the mirror, I love you. I'm amazing. I'm beautiful.
Yep. When I was in a relationship a long time ago, I remember the experience of we had broken up, and if you would have asked me, are you afraid he'll forget you? I would have said, no, that's ridiculous. Like, I don't think that in my head. It makes no sense. It's not logical. There's no way that's possible. And then I got a hold of the Holosync hypnosis, right? Which with the tones and they hit different parts of the brain. And I was doing the Holosync, and I was laying down in my bed, and I remember, as if like on a computer screen, the same question went across my head. I wasn't trying to focus on anything specific, but what had been like surfaced was, do I think he'll forget me? And at that point, it dropped down, it hit me, and I came up crying because I really believed that he would. Yeah. And I was like, wow. So you think that your conscious mind tells you things you have, but that does, again, 12%, right? 88% is this emotional body. We have stored cellular data and information and emotions in our body. And when I actually did the hypnosis and that came up for me and I started to cry, I went, wow, I guess I believe that. I didn't. You could have asked me. I could have argued. I could have told you why I didn't believe that. But then in my body's like, no, you believe that. I was like, oh, okay. Well, it's time to let that go. And deal with that fear.
That's amazing.
So you have to your body is really smart, and it's going to give you information. And most of us override our bodies all the time with our mental capacity. And so when you talk about mindset and power of positive thinking, when The Secret came out, it was really popular because it was very sensationalized, if you will, on stuff.
I loved it when it came out. I watched it probably 5 times.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But a lot of people, again, the disconnect of The Secret is on the stuff, is on the doing and not on the being.
Yeah, or the feeling.
On the feeling, right. So people are like, no, I did a vision board. I did affirmations. And I did this and it didn't work. And I'm like, well, because, again, you can't for 2 seconds say this, because you can say one thing and feel something completely different. You can be, every time you look at something that brings you pain, you may say, I want this relationship, but you may have pain that gets activated every time you look at that. So it's really about that emotion, and your body will tell you what you feel based on what you're attracting and what's going on in your body.
I love that. Yeah. And it was actually interesting. I came across The Secret and then across Esther and Jerry Hicks. And that was, I think, the missing thing, that no, you need to feel it in your body. Because it's all vibration. Everything is vibration. And if there's no vibration of feeling, it's not going to manifest.
And for those of you that are woo, thinking, oh, what do you mean vibration? It's so woo-woo. Let me give you this. So you are watching something on a frequency right now. We are on a frequency. You turn your radio dial 1 or 2 and you get to a different station. So we understand frequency when it comes to our televisions and our radios. Or our Wi-Fi channels, right? It's the same thing. We operate on frequencies, but people think, oh, it's so woo-woo. What do you mean frequency? Well, yeah, we're all frequency. We all live on a frequency. And you can feel it when you see somebody like the person I was talking about before, who, when I said, are you agitated or feeling bad? And they said, no. I'm thinking, yes, you are. It's so obvious. But they had no connection to that, right? But it emanates. You are a beacon. You are a cell tower who is putting out a frequency and asking for things that match to come in. And it's through this work that has also inspired me to include it in the work I was doing. I mean, you can't learn this, apply it, use it, and believe it, and not integrate it.
Yeah.
I'm all about the integration of the mind, body, soul for that very reason, because they're not separate.
Yeah.
It's all together.
Yeah.
It's all connected.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because let's talk about your invisible fitness formula. And I just heard JJ on our friend Allison and Susie show on the Food Heals podcast a couple of days ago. I'm like, she talked about this thing, and I wanted to talk about this on my show too. Because you talked about body image and how we're so imprinted, exteriorly imprinted by how we're supposed to look. So we show up, we do our nutrition plan, and we do the workout, but we don't feel good about it because we're doing it because it's expected of us, and not because it comes from that inner place of, I do this because it brings me joy, or I do this because I love myself.
Right.
So talk to me about that, JJ.
So I don't know at what point. Well, first of all, the word body shame did not come into my awareness, even though that's exactly what it's been my whole life, and everything that I've sort of rebelled against in the fitness industry is the idea of shaming. And maybe it's Brene Brown's work, maybe it's a combination of things, but it wasn't until recently that this body shame idea was like, oh yeah, that's what it is. It's body shame. That's what it's about, because it doesn't really matter what you look like. Most people have body shame of some kind, because there are these, whether it be from your family or from the media or from your environment or other kids at school or whatever. There's this understanding. I mean, I don't know that anyone ever shamed me or told me I was fat. I think my mother had battled with weight when she was younger, so she was hypersensitive to me gaining weight. She never told me. I think she used to say things like, well, if you keep eating like that, you might look like the side of the house. But I didn't take it. I never remember feeling sad about it, because she didn't say I look like the side of the house. She just didn't want me to look like the side of the house, because that's what was told to her. And so because of default, because of the fear of me being made fun of possibly in the future if I was to gain weight or look a certain way, she wanted to make sure that I didn't get that way. But I wouldn't say that's the first time I've ever articulated that, actually, or even thought about that. So, but I know it's because of her energy of what she brought. And then, I think when I was in my early teens, that's like, you do your first diet. It's just it was in the media, this diet and that diet. And then you understood like overeating. You understood eating a whole pizza and a bag of Doritos was not a good, healthy thing. Didn't matter how old you were. But
yeah, and I remember that I was born and raised in Germany. We had two magazines for teenage girls, and they were both coming out with diet plans for teenage girls. And I'm like looking back at it, and I'm like, really? They had that in a teen magazine, becoming a proponent of diet. I'm like, we're still growing. Our bodies are changing.
Right.
So that imprinting starts so
very early. Absolutely. Because you're modeling. It's energy. Yeah. So I mean, it's not on body shaming, but there was an incident that happened in my house a couple years ago, and I really I had a reaction that was like not me, and I thought, what is this about? And I was working with a therapist at the time, and we talked on the phone. I was about to go on a trip with my mother, who lives in Pennsylvania, and I'm in here in LA, and I was going to be meeting her, and I remember her saying to me, it sounds like insecurity. And I go, okay. And of course, my husband's like, so what happened? What did you say it was? She said it was like an insecurity, and he looked at me like, you? She's like, you were supported, and your parents are your biggest fans, and they said nice things to you. What do you mean insecurity? That doesn't sound right. And I agreed. I said, yeah, it doesn't make logical sense, but it feels right. And then when I got to the vacation we were on, I saw my mother react in a situation where she was uncomfortable, and I went, oh, there it is. There it is.
Coming from.
That's what. But it's not mine.
Yeah.
It's not mine.
But you were watching it. You were taught it growing up.
She modeled it. Yeah. So you get it. Yeah. I once told her to stand up straight because I was worried about her posture and her spine and her back. And of course, the minute she did that, she looked down at her breasts and went, ooh. Because being raised Catholic, there was this like, sex is bad. Don't be sexual. Don't flaunt your there's a lack of
honoring the divine feminine body. Or the body in general.
Right. So why do I do what I do? Because I grew up seeing the opposite and the shaming of our own bodies, and I didn't want that. And not that I'm perfect by any means, but I have struggled and found my way through the fitness industry, really being against it the whole way. I've been like, this is not what this is about, and this doesn't feel right, and what about this thing? Well, I'm like, something doesn't feel right about it. I've always kind of gone by what it feels like. And you can walk into a gym and feel the insecurity. You can feel people literally saying to themselves inside, I hate myself. I hate myself. I have to do this. I have to punish myself. I ate too much. I did bad. You can feel that.
Yeah.
Well, of course you don't want to work out if you tell yourself that, if that's what you believe. There's literally a difference between whether you come from love or whether you come from shame and hate. Same thing with your food. I recently had a client say to me, someone told her to do a cheat day. And I said, I'm not going to swear. I want to swear. But she said, I said, who the F told you that? I go, first of all, that indicates that you don't even like what you're doing. Like people, I have a pretty specific diet, and there's a lot of things I don't eat, but I don't feel restricted at all. In fact, if I see something that I want, I figure out how to make it in a way that's better for me. I don't feel restricted at all. Yeah, Number one, I'm good in the kitchen, but besides the point, I don't look at it and go, oh, I can't have that. I feel so bad.
But it's an association, eating healthy associated with deprivation.
I love when I eat the way I want to eat, and I don't want to have to eat this way because of how it makes me feel, or because of I know where it comes from, and there's not good things in that. But I don't feel deprived at all. So it's the same. So whether it be working out or food, there's one or two emotions that you are activating every time you do it. And when I was in my first or second personal training certification, there was a bodybuilder. People have heard this story, and it's in the book. It's in all the books. Bodybuilder, he was like a Mr. Olympian, and all these bodybuilders, like I judged them as meatheads for a long time, but they're super smart when it came to physiology and science and stuff. And I remember him standing in front of the room, and it was before we started on biomechanics, and he literally said, I have 11 injuries. Don't do what I did. And I went, okay.
Oh, fine.
Okay, I won't. I mean, that's all it took. I'm like, right, here's what happens when you throw weight around in a gym or exercise in a way that you don't understand what's going on. You're going to wear down your joints because you get one set of tires and one set of brake pads, period. And I'm so grateful that I learned that early on, so that everything came from that position of what I do today. Like, this is what I have, and this is all I get. And while I can change muscularly and body fat stuff, I get one skeletal structure, and I better take care of it, because if I don't, it'll wear down faster, and then I'll be like that person who's so in pain they can't work out, and now they are obese because they have so much pain. So I think it started early on with a general care about my joints and a general respect of my own human body. And the more I learn about whatever it is, food or the body, the more I want to do things that support it. I don't just do things because it tastes good in the moment. There are things that taste really good that I'll never eat again because it's not beneficial for you at all, and I have no interest in it. And while it may taste good, I'd feel bad about it when I was eating it because I would know what I was doing to my body. So it's Right. So the shaming is really wrapped up, and I think that external, again, if I lose weight, if I look better, I'll be happy. People will accept me. People will love me. People will pay attention to me. I'll be important. And I'll feel good. Okay. And it's not the case. It's not the case. There are plenty of skinny, beautiful people who are freaking miserable.
Exactly.
Depressed, miserable, addicts, unhappy. One does not equal the other. And I hate the fitness industry for that reason of focusing on the shaming. Everyone thinks because I'm a trainer, because I'm a pretty intense person, that I'm the kind of person that's going to work you really hard in a way that's uncomfortable or going to hurt you, and I'm going to shame you for what you did or didn't eat. And I'm like, I don't do that. I don't do that. You can do. I mean, I yelled at this client who told her about the cheat day, but I said, you know what? Eat what you want to eat. Eat what you want to eat until it makes you so sick and so uncomfortable that you actually don't want to eat it anymore. Because that's where I'd rather work with you, not in the I'm going to follow the rules, but I'm going to hate it every step of the way.
Exactly.
And that's where shame will trump when it comes into our body and our self-care, because again, we're trying to get to the external, thinking that it's about looking good or fitting in this certain size or shedding 10 pounds. You got to love yourself first. If you don't, it will not last, and you'll never be able to sustain whatever program you want to be on, because every time you do it, it'll activate shame.
The shame. And it's interesting that you're talking about that. I actually have this really interesting story going back to that positive affirmation and going back to connecting to the emotion. I had a previous coworker, and she was a junk food addict when I met her. And then she got on this whole train of doing these self-love programs and the power of positive thought and really working on loving herself. She's like, within a few weeks, I wasn't able to drink any more sodas. Then I wasn't able to eat any more fast food. And then I went to organic. And now and then I became a vegetarian. She's like, what's next? I'm like, breatharian? You're going to eat liver prana? But it was really interesting how just the self-love work she was doing and the powers of affirmation created a completely different craving, so to say, for her, where she's like, I cannot put these things in my body because I'm not honoring myself. And the other stuff is actually tasting really good. That good vegan, organic, non-sugar, non-gluten food.
Yep. Yeah, when you change the energy around what you're doing, it's easy to make these changes, but everybody focuses on the outside in. I do both. I focus from the outside in and from the inside out. But the inside out work is really where it's at, because there's no amount of money, there's no amount of stuff, there's no amount of travel, and there's no amount of a perfect body that you're going to get that's going to make up for faulty beliefs and sabotaging emotions and negative toxic feelings that you're storing inside of you. Yeah. There's not enough stuff in the world that's going to make up or make the difference until that stuff until you release it, make peace with it, utilize it for what it's there for, and learn how to utilize and leverage it.
Yeah, that's beautiful, JJ. Thank you for saying that. And I think this is a perfect closing statement for us for today. Where can our listeners find you?
Probably jjflizanes.com is the best place. If you can't spell my name, you can go to invisiblefitness.com. Invisiblefitness.com, jjflizanes.com. That's probably where to go.
Perfect. And you have a whole bunch of podcasts, and the links are on your website, right? From what I remember. There's
a page that says shows, and it'll take you to whichever topic you're interested in, and wherever that podcast lives, whether it be on iTunes or on YouTube or on my website. So
perfect. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I love what you shared with us. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, Rebel Hearts, that's it for today. We hope that you got so inspired that you're gonna go and do all these positive affirmations now, and really, this show is all about empowering you. So I hope that by showing you how powerful you are, that by changing your thoughts, becoming aware of how you're feeling, that you can now go out and create the changes that you desire in your life. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you like this show, we would love for you to go on iTunes, leave us a 5-star ratings and reviews, because that helps us to continue bringing you amazing guests. So we would appreciate if you took a moment to do that. And we'll see you again next Wednesday. And in the meantime, remember to rebel on.
In the future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.